Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The current Friday for Future demonstrations has faced our society with an important question. In the demonstrations, the demonstrators want to reform our current environmental policy. As it is right now, they have no way of doing it otherwise, since in most countries you must be 18 or above in order to be allowed to vote. Young people, 16 and 17-year-old, have no way of voting, so they don't have a say in the politics. This includes climate change and how to combat it. Is this a good thing? Should young people be able to decide in politics? The most famous person against this is the conservative politician Pato. He states that young people are incapable of making informed decisions due to the fact that they aren't fully developed yet and lack the life experience needed to make good, informed and sensible decisions. This argument is nonsense. It is true that brain development is a criterion on whether or not someone is allowed to vote. For example, if someone has a severe mental disease, his or her family can restrict that person from voting. Brain development is the reason why people under the age of 18 aren't allowed to vote. But a lack of brain development clearly doesn't apply to 16 and 17-year-old. Furthermore, they are more than enough developed to vote. 16 and 17-year-old are very much capable of making informed decisions. Or would anyone in this room say that they are not mentally fully developed yet? Would anyone in this room agree that they are incapable of making good, informed and sensible decisions? Even if 16 and 17-year-old are very stupid and lack the intelligence to vote, intelligence is not a criterion in our current system. To vote does one have to do an intelligence quiz? Even people with dementia in most cases can vote since it's not obligated to remove their voting status. Pato's first argument is idiotic due to certain criteria, because intelligence is not a criterion at all. Even if it was, not all voters follow these criteria, and 16 and 17-year-olds certainly do. In contrast to Pato's statement, a 17-year-old brain is way more developed and 17-year-old are way more intelligent on average compared to an 80-year-old. His second argument is that young people are uninformed and lack any interest in politics. This argument is as nonsensical as the first. One can vote no matter if one is interested or not. This simply doesn't matter at all if someone can vote or not. And as stated previously, being uninformed also isn't an argument to restrict the right to vote. Not only is the argument flawed, since it doesn't determine at all if someone should be allowed to vote or not, it is also wrong. Pointing at an entire group, an entire generation, and calling them uninterested is ridiculous. Not all young people are uninterested in politics, of course. It is true that there are a lot of young people that are uninterested, like Pato states, but this uninterest in politics is not just a problem of our youth, but spreads through all generations. If 16 and 17-year-old can vote, it would not change anything in a negative way, since the people who are not interested in politics would simply not vote. So, it would not make any difference for those, but if they continue being restricted from voting, we would continue to stop our young bright minds to shape their own future. Pato's final argument for restricting young people from voting is that young people are easily influenced and that they would therefore only vote what their surroundings dictate. As his previous arguments, this one is also flawed. He is right in stating that young people are easily influenced. They are almost certain to vote the same as their family or friends. And if not, they vote what their filtered content on the internet says. Young people are easily influenced, but so is everyone. It doesn't matter what age you are, you always vote influenced by your surroundings. Our current older generation also had that problem. They grew up in a family with a certain political view. Mostly they lived in an entire region of people with the same political viewpoint. Their school, their work, and all social activities they did was mostly with people with the same political viewpoint. Our older generation had it even more severe, because in most countries like Germany, for example, there were only two main parties, so either you were a conservative or a social democrat. They did not have as many options to vote for, and they did not grow up in such a mixed multicultural and political society as our current youth has. And the previous mentioned internet can also be used to look at both sides to a point which our older generation didn't have. And to put the icing on the cake, being strongly influenced by one's surrounding has nothing to do with whether someone should be allowed to vote or not. To conclude, all the arguments restricting young people from voting are wrong. All these claims are wrong. In contrast, young people are more than qualified. And the arguments against are based on criteria which are not a criterion at all. The real question is not whether 16-year-old can vote, since they clearly should be, but whether to restrict people from voting when they reach a certain age. The way it is right now, we are being undemocratic. We are stealing young people's rightful ability to vote. This leads to the problem we are facing right now. We have old people deciding the future which they will not be part of, and forbidding the people to vote who are part of the future. If we continue like this, our older generation will keep on ignoring the big problems of the future, like climate change. If we continue like this, we, young people, will have to deal with huge crisis in our future. We need to lower the age from which one can vote to at least 16. We need to fight for our right to vote. We need to be able to decide our own future. We can't have our future be decided by a generation who is not part of it. To do this, please sign this petition, protest, and raise attention to finally allow people to have their rightful say in making our future better than it is right now. Thank you.